Joined once again by the Reverend Frank Ritchie. And as we've just celebrated a significant part of the Christian calendar, I'm talking about Pentecost. I'd be interested to see where we go to next. Well, Frank, welcome back to the show. Great to have you with us.
Always a pleasure to hang out with you too.
Okay, so from Pentecost, where do we go in terms of the Christian calendar?
That's a really good question. And I love that the Christian calendar, and it's partly just because it's me, actually frames a number of the discussions that we have throughout the year. So we have discussed this previously, but I just think it's so valuable to come back to this year after year after year, because it just embeds the story of Jesus. The Christian calendar is shaped by the story of Jesus. So we've just been through Lent, and then we had the high point of Pascha or Easter, as we remembered the crucifixion and the resurrection of Jesus. And then we stayed in the resurrection for a while because Easter isn't just a weekend, it's a whole season. And then we got to the Ascension, and a couple of Sundays ago, we celebrated Pentecost. And then Sunday just gone is kind of how we kick off ordinary time. We celebrated the Trinity. But now we're into ordinary time. And ordinary time goes up until the beginning of Advent, near the beginning of December, when we start to look towards the second coming of Jesus and we prepare ourselves for the gift of Christmas. So this time we're in now is a really long period. And in the northern hemisphere, it corresponds with spring and summer, whereas for us, it's kind of winter, and then we move into spring. And so because the northern hemisphere dominates how all this is done, the color for ordinary time, because every part of the liturgical calendar has a color, the color is green because that's where the northern hemisphere is at. Kind of doesn't fit the southern hemisphere, but I really like it because this time of year is about recognizing the wonder of the story of Jesus, which we've both just been through, and then thinking about what does it mean to live that out every single day. Because it's great to have the high points in life. Life has lots of highs and it has lots of lows, but it also has just many days that are just normal, where we get out of bed, we do our morning routine. If you've got a job, you head off to work, you head off to school, whatever. You come home at the end of the day, you make dinner, you probably watch some TV, and then off to bed again. Then every now and then at our age, you might be lucky enough to have a social event. But otherwise, it's just kind of this grind on and on and on. Yet we're people who believe that God is truly present all the time. So ordinary time is this time when we start to reflect on, what does God look like in the ordinary? How does God dwell with me in the ordinary when it's not really high and it's not really low? So I think this is I would almost say it's almost the most valuable time, because we've taken the story, the crucifixion, the resurrection, Pentecost, and we're going, how does that apply to my everyday life?
Well, I mean, that's the next question then, Frank, because I can't help but wonder if it's one of the hardest things that we wrestle with as Christians, the yet but not yet, that's great, the promise looking forward to, but here's my day to day, and what does it mean to have my faith worked out in that? So as you come into this season, are there some things that we can help take into this season to really wrestle with what this looks like?
Yeah, I think in times like Lent, we engage practices that we do for a specific period of time. So, Lent, for instance, as we prepare for Easter, is all about prayer, fasting, charity. Those are kind of the three big pillars of Lent. And then Advent, we engage some things as well. Ordinary time is a time where we can start to think, what does it look like to build rituals that work for me and rhythms that work for me in my daily, everyday life, to be reminded that God is present, to continue to be transformed into the image of Christ so that the way that I live reflects that. So I think ordinary time, away from those big pillars, is just a chance to go, okay, I'm going to try some things. Maybe there are some areas of my life here where things aren't working as well as I'd really like them to. So, what are some things that I can try and experiment with? And they might work and they might not work, but it's a chance to really think about that day to day relationship with God. So, as we begin ordinary time, I'd encourage people to do one thing. Just look at your life and go, okay, so there are some areas where I would like to be better. Now, it's really easy to examine your whole life and go, I'm not doing well here, I'm not doing well here, I'm not doing well here, and I'm not doing well here. And if you're evangelical like myself, you'll just carry a sense of guilt right through life, and you probably won't do much of anything. But I think if we take the opportunity just to go, what's one thing I could do? one really little thing, and just build that into my life as a habit. So for me, it's not going to sound very spiritual, but I know that sleep was not so good in my life. And that if I could get on top of sleep, then a whole bunch of other things would sort out in my life. So the one thing I've been working on now for a little while is my sleep routine, which again doesn't sound overly spiritual, but because now I'm getting on top of sleep, the ability to pray is opening up a little more. The ability to look at my nutrition and exercise is opening up, but it's only by looking at one thing rather than all the things. So this ordinary time, as we begin, I'll just say, look at your life and go, is there one thing that I can look at and build into my life that might help that journey with Jesus and that healthy life a little more?
I think it's an excellent opportunity, isn't it, to look at some of those spiritual practices, that we may, would be wanting to put into our day to day, or like you say, some of those lifestyle practices, which will simply help us to function better and be the best versions of ourselves that we can be. Hey, Frank, thank you so much for delving deep into this one. Some people might say it's boring time. I think ordinary time sounds like some of the best times. What would you say to that?
Oh, I would say that actually, in a world addicted to novel and new and excitement, I would say boring is very, very healthy.
Indeed.
Boring is where creativity gets sparked, where we're compelled to look at the world in a different way. So I'd say if you're feeling bored, you're actually in a really, really good space.
Well, just before we let you go, just this one thing that you said that I just wanted to touch on. And you said, for someone like me, you might carry a sense of guilt of not being able to, get all these things done where you see these areas need. Is there a risk that we slip too much into self-improvement? Do we need to also take the time to really reflect on God's grace? Because I think that's one of the things that stands out, that knowing how far from God I can end up, knowing how much I need his grace in Christ.
Yeah, I think we Christians can fall into the whole guilt thing far too easily. And I think relying on God's grace and God's love is the thing that enables us just to do the one thing. Going, actually, it's okay. I'm okay and I'm good with God. I'm good with God if I do nothing. But actually, if we just do this one thing, I'm still good with God in all these other areas as well. I'm just going to do this one thing because I get to participate in this journey with God as well. It shouldn't be born from a sense of guilt. It should be born from a sense of gratitude for the gift of life that we have been given and the desire to respond to that. So great point, Tom.
Hey, Frank, thanks so much once again for joining us. Look forward to catching up with you next week, finding out how ordinary time is going for you. Thanks again.
Thanks, Frank.
You.
Thanks for joining us on Rhema. Now, if you found value in today's content, hit that like button. And if you haven't already, consider subscribing to our channel with the subscribe button. This really helps us to continue to produce more quality content for you. And hey, if you'd like to stay updated and never miss any of our future videos, ring that notification bell as well. Don't forget to follow us on our other socials, which are in the description below. And until then, stay tuned.